They're still alive! 8-year-old Lily Parker screamed those words into the cold October air, her small hands clawing at rotting cellar doors, while her dog Shadow barked with desperate fury. Beneath those boards, 2 elderly souls had been waiting to die for 4 days, bound, starved, forgotten. Their own nephew had buried them alive, and in 12 hours, he planned to finish what he started. But he never counted on a child who refused to walk away. He never counted on a retired military dog who still remembered how to find survivors. And he never counted on the kind of courage that would bring an entire criminal empire crashing down. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from. Subscribe now and stay until the very end, because this story will restore everything you believe about miracles, hiding in ordinary moments. Lily Parker walked faster than usual that afternoon. She didn't know why. Something in the October air felt different. The wind carried a weight she couldn't name pressing against her chest like an invisible hand urging her forward. Her worn sneakers crunched against the gravel path, and beside her Shadow moved with a tension she rarely saw anymore. The Belgian Malinois had been calm for months now. The nightmares that once made him whimper in his sleep had faded. The flinching at loud sounds had softened. But today his ears rotated constantly, scanning for something only he could perceive. "What is it, boy?" Lily whispered, adjusting the straps of her backpack. Shadow didn't answer. His amber eyes remained fixed on the road ahead, where Thornwood Lane curved into shadow. Lily was 8 years old, but she carried herself like someone who had already learned that the world didn't wait for children to grow up before testing them. Her chestnut hair hung in twin braids, slightly messy from the school day. Her grandmother's oversized cardigan wrapped around her small frame like armor. She had worn it every day since Grandma Ruth passed because somehow it still smelled like lavender and old books and safety. Her mother Sandra worked the night shift at Willowbrook County Hospital. That meant Lily walked home alone most afternoons, Shadow faithfully at her side. Sandra hated it. She had argued with the school, with her supervisor, with anyone who would listen. But single mothers in small towns didn't get to choose between paying rent and being present. So Lily learned to be brave, and Shadow learned to be her protector. "We're taking the shortcut today," Lily announced, as if Shadow needed convincing. "Mom said to come straight home, but this way is faster. She won't know." Shadow's ears flicked back briefly. Lily imagined he was judging her. He probably was. They turned onto Thornwood Lane. The houses here were older, forgotten. Willowbrook had grown in other directions, leaving this stretch of road to crumble quietly. Porches sagged under the weight of memories. Windows stared blankly at passers-by like eyes that had stopped seeing. The trees grew thick and wild, their branches intertwining overhead to block the autumn sun. Lily had walked this path 100 times. She knew every crack in the pavement, every rusted mailbox, every abandoned tire swing. But today, something felt wrong. Shadow stopped. His entire body went rigid. The fur along his spine rose in a dark ridge. His nostrils flared, pulling in scents that Lily's human senses couldn't detect. And then he did something he hadn't done in over a year. He assumed the position. Lily recognized it instantly. She had seen it in videos Sandra had shown her when they first adopted Shadow. The videos from his military days before the explosion that ended his service, before the PTSD that made him unfit for duty. In those videos, Shadow would freeze exactly like this when he detected survivors beneath rubble. "Shadow." Lily's voice trembled. "What do you smell?" The dog didn't move. His gaze locked onto the old Hartwell mansion at the end of the lane. The house had been abandoned for 20 years, ever since old Mr. Hartwell died and his children fought over the estate until there was nothing left to fight for. Now it stood rotting, its Victorian architecture collapsing inward like a body slowly consuming itself. Shadow pulled against his training. He never pulled. "Shadow heel," Lily commanded, using the German word Sandra had taught her. "Bleib." He didn't obey. Instead, he pulled harder, dragging Lily toward the mansion's collapsing fence. His whimpers grew urgent, desperate. This wasn't excitement. This wasn't curiosity. This was alert. Lily's heart began to pound. Okay, she breathed, letting him lead. "Show me." They pushed through the broken gate. The hinges screamed against the movement. Lily winced, glancing around to make sure no one was watching. The lane remained empty. The world remained silent, except for Shadow's increasingly frantic breathing. He led her around the side of the mansion, past walls covered in dead ivy, past windows so dirty they reflected nothing. His nose pressed to the ground, following a trail invisible to human eyes. Finally, he stopped at a collapsed section of the foundation. A cellar entrance. The wooden doors had rotted through in several places, leaving gaps where darkness seeped out like smoke. Shadow pawed at the wood, then looked back at Lily with an expression she had never seen before. Pleading. "There's nothing down there," Lily said, but her voice lacked conviction. "It's just an old basement." Shadow barked once, sharp, commanding. Lily flinched. He never barked like that at her. She knelt beside the cellar doors, her knees pressing into cold dirt. Her hands shook as she leaned forward, pressing her ear to the rotting wood. She held her breath. For a long moment, she heard nothing. Wind through dead branches, her own heartbeat thundering in her ears, Shadow's restless panting. Then, "Please." Lily jerked back, nearly falling. Her eyes went wide. "Anyone? We're down here." The voice was old, trembling, barely more than a whisper, but it was unmistakably human. "Oh my God," Lily gasped. "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God." She pressed her face to a gap in the wood, straining to see into the darkness below. At first there was only black, but as her eyes adjusted, shapes emerged. Concrete walls, a dirt floor, and in the far corner, huddled together like abandoned children, two figures bound with rope. An elderly man with silver hair, an elderly woman with white curls. Their faces were gaunt, their clothes were filthy, and their eyes, when they lifted toward the light, held a terror so deep that Lily felt it in her bones. "They're still alive," she cried out, the words tearing from her throat before she could stop them. The old man's head snapped up. For a moment he seemed to think he was dreaming. Then his cracked lips moved, forming words Lily couldn't hear. "I see you," Lily called down, her voice breaking. "I see you both. Hold on. I'm going to get help." The woman began to cry. Soft, shuddering sobs that echoed in the cellar like prayers. Lily scrambled to her feet, mind racing. She needed to call 911. She needed to find an adult. She needed to... A truck engine rumbled in the distance. Lily froze. Shadow's growl deepened, his body positioning between Lily and the sound. His teeth bared, slightly hackles raised to full height. The rumble grew louder, closer. Through the trees, Lily saw a black pickup truck turn onto Thornwood Lane. It moved slowly, deliberately, as if the driver knew exactly where he was going, as if he had been here many times before. Panic seized Lily's chest. "Shadow, come!" she hissed, grabbing his collar. "We have to hide." She pulled him behind a pile of debris near the mansion's collapsed porch. Dead leaves crackled beneath them as they pressed against the rotting wood. Lily clamped her hand over her mouth to silence her breathing. The truck stopped. The engine died. A door opened. Footsteps crunched on gravel. Through a gap in the debris, Lily watched a man emerge from the vehicle. He was tall, maybe 45, with sharp features and dark hair slicked back from his forehead. He wore a leather jacket despite the autumn chill, and his boots were new enough to look wrong on this forgotten road. But it was his expression that made Lily's blood run cold. He was smiling. Not the warm smile of a concerned citizen checking on an abandoned property. Not the nervous smile of someone who had stumbled upon something unexpected. This was the smile of a man who knew exactly what was hidden in that cellar, and didn't care. "Victor's here," the man called out, his voice carrying an artificial cheerfulness. "Miss me." He walked toward the cellar doors, whistling softly to himself. Lily's stomach churned. Victor. That was his name. Victor something. She tried to memorize everything about him. The way he walked with an arrogance that seemed practiced, the expensive watch glinting on his wrist, the slight limp in his right leg. He reached the cellar and kicked the doors with his boot. "Dinner time, folks," he announced. "Though I'm not sure why I bother. You'll be signing those papers soon enough, and then none of this will matter." From below, the old man's voice rose stronger than before. Victor, please. Think about what you're doing. We raised you. When your parents couldn't, when my parents couldn't. Victor interrupted his cheerfulness, evaporating. Yeah, I've heard that speech. Every holiday, every family dinner. We took you in, Victor. We gave you everything, Victor. But you know what you never gave me, Uncle Harold? Silence. Respect. Victor's voice hardened. You treated me like a charity case, like something broken that needed fixing. Well, guess what? The broken thing doesn't need your permission anymore. You're going to sign over the accounts, the property, everything. And then you're going to have a tragic accident. A fall down these cellar stairs, maybe. Old bones break so easily. The woman's voice rose trembling but defiant. We won't sign anything. You'll have to kill us first. Eleanor, Victor laughed, but there was no humor in it. That's exactly the plan. Lily's hands clenched into fists. Tears burned in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Beside her, Shadow vibrated with restrained aggression. She could feel his muscles coiling, ready to launch. Not yet, she thought desperately. We're not ready. Victor pulled something from his jacket pocket, a sandwich wrapped in plastic. He tossed it through the gaps in the cellar door. Eat up, he called down. Keep your strength. I need you alive long enough to hold a pen. He turned and walked back toward his truck, still whistling. Lily didn't move. She didn't breathe. The truck door opened, closed. The engine roared to life, and Victor Crane drove away. Lily waited a full 5 minutes after the sound of the truck faded before she dared to move. Her legs had gone numb from crouching. Her heart still hammered against her ribs. Okay, she whispered to Shadow. Okay, we have to go. We have to get help. She ran back to the cellar doors and pressed her face to the gap again. Can you hear me? She called down. My name is Lily. I'm going to get help. I'm going to bring the police. Just hold on. Please, hold on. The old man's voice floated up, weaker now. God bless you, child. God bless you. But be careful. He's dangerous. He's not right in the head. Please don't let him catch you. I won't, Lily promised. I'm faster than I look. The woman spoke next, her voice cracking. What's your name again, sweetheart? Lily Parker. Lily, the woman repeated it like a prayer. I'm Eleanor. This is my husband, Harold. We've been down here for 4 days. Please, Lily, please don't forget us. I won't forget you. Lily's voice broke. I swear on my grandmother's grave, I won't forget you. She stood up so fast she nearly fell. Shadow pressed against her legs, steadying her. She looked down at him and something passed between them. An understanding, a partnership. We have to run, Lily said, like we've never run before. Shadow's tail wagged once, ready. They burst from the debris and sprinted toward the road. Lily's sneakers pounded against the gravel, her braids flying behind her. Shadow kept pace easily, his long legs eating up the distance. The October wind whipped at their faces, cold and sharp. Thornwood Lane stretched ahead of them, empty and endless. Lily's mind raced faster than her feet. Who could she tell? Where could she go? The police station was on Main Street, nearly 2 miles away. Her mother wouldn't be home for hours. The neighbors on this road were all gone, their houses as abandoned as the Hartwell mansion. But she knew someone who might be closer. Deputy Marcus Reed. He lived on Elm Street near the old fire station. Lily had seen him at the school assembly last month talking about community safety. He had kind eyes and a serious voice, and when he spoke about protecting vulnerable people, something in his expression had told her he meant every word. 2 miles to the station, less than 1 to Deputy Reed's house. Elm Street. Lily gasped between breaths. We're going to Elm Street. She cut through Mrs. Patterson's overgrown yard, ducked under the broken fence behind the old mill, and emerged onto a narrow path that wound through Willowbrook's forgotten outskirts. Shadow stayed close, his senses alert for any sign of the black truck. They ran until Lily's lungs burned. They ran until her legs screamed for mercy. They ran until the trees thinned and the houses grew closer together and the streets began to look familiar again. Elm Street. Lily stumbled to a halt, gasping for air. Her vision blurred with exhaustion and tears. But there at the end of the block sat a blue pickup truck with a Willowbrook Sheriff's Department sticker on the bumper. Deputy Reed was home. She ran to his front door and pounded with both fists. "Hello," she screamed. "Please, somebody help me, please!" Footsteps inside. A shadow behind the door's frosted glass. The door swung open. Deputy Marcus Reed stood in the doorway, still in his uniform, his dinner interrupted. He was tall with dark skin and steady eyes that quickly scanned Lily's tear-streaked face and heaving chest. His expression shifted from surprise to concern in half a second. Hey, he said, kneeling to her level. "Slow down. What's wrong? Are you hurt?" "There are people," Lily gasped. "Old people, in a cellar, on Thornwood Lane. They're tied up. A man named Victor is going to kill them. Please, you have to help them. They've been there for 4 days." Marcus's brow furrowed. "Thornwood Lane, the abandoned section. The old Hartwell house," Lily confirmed. "My dog found them, Shadow found them. He used to be a military dog. He knows when people are trapped. Please, Deputy Reed, you have to believe me. There's a woman named Eleanor and a man named Harold, and they're really old and really scared, and Victor is going to come back and—" Whoa. Marcus held up his hands. "Take a breath. You said Harold and Eleanor." Lily nodded frantically. Something changed in Marcus's eyes. Recognition. "The Bennetts," he said slowly. "Harold and Eleanor Bennett. They're supposed to be on vacation. They left for their mountain cabin 4 days ago." "They didn't leave," Lily's voice cracked. "They're in that cellar. Victor put them there. He wants them to sign papers, and then he's going to make it look like an accident." Marcus stood up, his expression hardening. He pulled out his phone and dialed quickly. "Dispatch, this is Reed. I need you to do me a favor. Check on the Bennett property on Oak Avenue. See if their vehicle is still in the garage, and pull any recent records for—" He glanced at Lily. "Victor Crane. That name ring a bell?" Lily shook her head. "He called the old man Uncle Harold." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Check for Victor Crane. Any familial connection to Harold and Eleanor Bennett. Call me back in 5. He hung up and looked down at Lily with an intensity that made her feel suddenly important. "What's your name, kid?" "Lily Parker. My mom is Sandra Parker. She works at the hospital." "Sandra's daughter." Marcus nodded slowly. "I've met your mom. She's good people." He glanced at Shadow, who sat at rigid attention watching the exchange with intelligent eyes. "This, the military dog you mentioned, femme, Belgian Malinois," Lily said proudly. "He served in Afghanistan before he got hurt. He still remembers everything." Marcus studied the dog for a long moment. Then he looked back at Lily. "You know what, I believe you." Relief flooded through Lily so fast she nearly collapsed. "You do?" "I've seen that look in a dog's eyes before," Marcus said. "Canines don't make mistakes when it comes to survivors. And the Bennett situation has been bothering me. Nice old couple suddenly goes dark for 4 days. No calls to their pastor. No check-ins with the church meal delivery." Something smelled wrong. His phone buzzed. He answered immediately. "Reed here." Yeah, I'm listening." His expression darkened with each word. "You're kidding me. 3 weeks ago and no one flagged it." Lily watched his face, trying to read the conversation. "All right, send a unit to the Bennett house to confirm the vehicle situation. And run Victor Crane's financials if you can. Something tells me we're going to find a hole he's trying to fill." He hung up and looked at Lily. "Victor Crane filed paperwork 3 weeks ago to become the Bennett's emergency contact. He also started the process for power of attorney over their medical and financial decisions." Lily didn't fully understand what that meant, but she understood the tone. "He was planning this," she whispered. "For a while, yeah." Marcus grabbed his jacket from a hook near the door. "I'm going to check out Thornwood Lane. You need to go home and stay there. Lock the doors. Don't answer for anyone except your mom or me. Understood?" "I want to come with you." "Absolutely not. But I know exactly where they are. I can show you the cellar entrance." Marcus knelt again, his hands on her shoulders. His eyes were kind but firm. "Lily, you've already done something incredibly brave. You might have just saved 2 lives. But if Victor Crane is as dangerous as he sounds, I need you far away from that house. Can you be brave one more time by going home and staying safe? Lily wanted to argue. Every fiber of her being screamed to follow him to see this through, to make sure Harold and Eleanor were rescued. But she looked at Shadow. The dog was watching her with calm, trusting eyes. He had done his part. He had led her to the cellar. Now he seemed to say it was time to let the adults handle the rest. Okay, Lily said finally, but promise me you'll save them. I promise to do everything in my power. It wasn't the answer Lily wanted, but it was the truth, and that was something. Marcus drove toward Thornwood Lane with his lights off and his radio quiet. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the empty road. He had called for backup, but the nearest unit was 20 minutes out. In 20 minutes, a lot could go wrong. He thought about the Bennetts. He had met them once at a town council meeting about senior safety programs. Harold had shaken his hand firmly, looked him in the eye and said, "We're counting on people like you to protect people like us." Marcus had promised to do just that. Now that promise was being tested. He parked a quarter-mile from the Hartwell mansion and approached on foot, his hand resting on his service weapon. The house loomed ahead, darker than the gathering dusk, its windows like hollow eyes watching his approach. Every instinct screamed that something was wrong. He circled around to the side of the house, following the path Lily had described. Dead leaves crunched beneath his boots, impossibly loud in the silence. He found the collapsed section of foundation, the cellar doors. He knelt beside them and pressed his ear to the wood. At first, nothing. Then faintly, "Harold, I can't feel my hands anymore." "I know, Ellie. I know. Just hold on." That little girl said help was coming. Marcus's chest tightened. They were alive. Still alive. He stood up and surveyed the cellar doors. The lock was rusted but intact. He could break it with a few solid kicks, but that would make noise. A lot of noise. He was reaching for his radio to update dispatch when a voice spoke behind him. "Well, well. Looks like the cavalry arrived faster than expected." Marcus spun around. Victor Crane stood 10 feet away, a gun leveled at Marcus's chest. He must have circled back after seeing Lily's footprints. He must have been watching from the trees. "Deputy." Victor smiled that cold smile. "You should really learn to check your surroundings. Isn't that day one at the academy?" Marcus kept his hands visible, his mind racing. "Victor Crane, I presume. Guilty as charged." Victor chuckled at his own joke. "Though hopefully not for long. You see, I have plans. Big plans. And you just walked right into the middle of them." "Your aunt and uncle are down in that cellar," Marcus said evenly. "They've been there for 4 days. That's kidnapping. Aggravated elder abuse. Add the gun in your hand and you're looking at decades in federal prison." "Only if anyone finds out." Victor's smile widened. "But here's the thing, Deputy. You came alone. No backup. No witnesses. And in about 30 seconds, you're going to have a very unfortunate accident. These old houses are dangerous, you know. Rotten floors, collapsing walls. Tragic, really." Marcus calculated his options. Victor was 8 feet away, gun steady. Too far to rush. Too close to miss. "There's a little girl," Marcus said. "She knows everything. She saw your face. She heard your voice. Even if you kill me, she'll tell everyone." For the first time, Victor's smile faltered. "What little girl?" "The one who found your victims. The one who came to me. The one who's probably already talking to dispatch right now." Victor's eyes flickered with uncertainty. His grip on the gun tightened. "You're bluffing." "Am I brown hair? Braids. Big dog by her side." "She described you perfectly, Victor. The leather jacket, the limp, the way you whistled while you talked about killing your own family." Victor's face contorted. "That little—" He never finished the sentence. A shadow exploded from the darkness behind him. 70 pounds of muscle and fury slammed into Victor's back, sending the gun flying. Teeth clamped down on his arm with surgical precision. Shadow. The dog had followed them. Victor screamed, thrashing against the attack. But Shadow had been trained by the best. He knew how to neutralize a threat. He knew how to hold on until the enemy stopped fighting. Marcus lunged forward, kicking the gun away, and forcing Victor face first into the dirt. Within seconds, he had the man cuffed hands behind his back. "Get him off me!" Victor wailed. "Get that monster off me!" Shadow aus. Marcus used the German release command he had learned from working with K9 units. "Ah yes." Shadow released Victor's arm and stepped back, but his eyes never left the man on the ground. His body remained coiled, ready to strike again if needed. From behind the debris pile, a small figure emerged. Lily Parker, breathing hard, her face streaked with tears and dirt. "I told you to go home," Marcus said, but there was no anger in his voice. "I tried." Lily's chin trembled. "But Shadow wouldn't let me. He knew you needed help." Marcus looked at the dog, at the little girl, at the man groaning in the dirt, and for the first time in years, he felt something he had almost forgotten. Hope. The cellar doors came off easier than expected. Marcus kicked through the rotted wood, sending splinters flying into the darkness below. The smell hit him first, mold rust and something else, something human. Fear concentrated over 4 days of captivity. "Mr. and Mrs. Bennett," he called down. "This is Deputy Marcus Reed. You're safe now. We're coming to get you." A sob echoed from below. Then Harold's voice cracked and weak. "Thank God. Oh, thank God." Marcus descended the crude stairs, his flashlight cutting through the darkness. What he found would stay with him forever. 2 elderly people huddled in the corner, their wrists raw from rope, their faces hollow from hunger and terror. Eleanor was barely conscious. Harold was holding her like she might disappear if he let go. "Eleanor needs insulin," Harold rasped. "She's diabetic. 4 days without medication. Please help her first." Marcus was already on his radio. "Dispatch, I need an ambulance at the Hartwell property on Thornwood Lane. 2 victims, elderly, 4 days in captivity. Female subject is diabetic and in critical condition. I repeat, critical condition. How far out is that bus?" 8 minutes, deputy." "Make it 5. He knelt beside the Bennetts, cutting the ropes from their wrists as gently as possible. Eleanor moaned softly, but didn't open her eyes. Harold looked up at Marcus with tears streaming down his weathered face. "Victor did this," he whispered. "Our own nephew. We raised him when his parents couldn't. We gave him everything." "I know, sir. He's in custody now. He can't hurt you anymore." Harold shook his head slowly. "We would have died down here. Another day, maybe 2. Eleanor was fading. I could feel her slipping away." His voice broke. "How did you find us?" Marcus glanced back toward the cellar entrance where Lily's face peered down Shadow standing guard beside her. "Her," Marcus said simply. "That little girl and her dog, they heard you. They believed. They didn't give up." Harold's gaze found Lily. The old man's lips trembled. "An angel," he breathed. "God sent us an angel." Yacht. The ambulance arrived in 6 minutes. Paramedics swarmed the cellar, stabilizing Eleanor with IV fluids and emergency glucose. Her eyes fluttered open briefly, finding Harold's face, and a weak smile crossed her lips before unconsciousness claimed her again. Harold refused treatment until they were lifting Eleanor into the ambulance. Only then did he allow the paramedics to check his vitals, treat his rope burns, address the dehydration that had left his body trembling. As they prepared to transport, Harold reached out and grabbed Marcus's arm. "The girl," he said urgently. "Lily, I need to see her. Please." Marcus helped Lily approach the ambulance. She looked small against the flashing lights, her grandmother's cardigan wrapped tight around her shivering body. Shadow pressed against her leg, a warm anchor in the chaos. Harold reached out his hand. Lily took it. "You saved us," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "An 8-year-old girl and her brave dog. You saved our lives, Lily Parker. I will never, as long as I live, forget what you did today." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "Is Mrs. Bennett going to be okay?" Harold's grip tightened. "Because of you. Yes, because of you, we both are." The paramedics began to close the ambulance doors. Harold kept his eyes on Lily until the last possible moment. "God bless you, child," he called out. God bless you and that magnificent dog." The doors closed. The ambulance pulled away, sirens wailing into the gathering darkness. And Lily Parker stood on Thornwood Lane, shaking exhausted and changed forever. Marcus drove Lily home. He had already called Sandra at the hospital. She was on her way, having left mid-shift the moment she heard what happened. Marcus could hear her crying through the phone, a mixture of terror and pride that no parent should ever have to feel. In the passenger seat, Lily sat silent, her hand resting on Shadow's head. The dog had curled himself onto the floor of the patrol car, his chin on her feet. "You know," Marcus said quietly, "what you did today was incredibly dangerous. You should have gone straight home like I told you." Lily didn't respond. But it was also incredibly brave. He paused. "If Shadow hadn't followed me, Victor might have... Well, let's just say you saved more than the Bennetts tonight." Lily looked up at him, her green eyes old beyond their years. "Shadow knew you needed help," she said. "He always knows." Marcus nodded slowly. "Military dogs are special. They never really stop serving." Lily stroked Shadow's ears. "He served again today." They pulled into the driveway of a small, modest house on Maple Avenue. Sandra Parker's car was already there, parked at an angle that suggested she had barely remembered to stop before jumping out. The front door flew open. Sandra ran to the patrol car, yanking Lily from the seat and crushing her in an embrace so tight it must have hurt. But Lily didn't complain. She buried her face in her mother's shoulder and finally let herself cry. "My baby," Sandra sobbed. "My brave, stupid, incredible baby. What were you thinking?" "I couldn't leave them, Mom. They were going to die." Sandra pulled back, holding Lily's face in her hands. Tears streamed down both their cheeks. "I know," Sandra whispered. "I know you couldn't. That's who you are. That's who Grandma Ruth raised you to be." She looked up at Marcus, her expression wavering between gratitude and exhaustion. "Thank you, Deputy, for bringing her home safe." "Ma'am, your daughter is the one who made this happen. I was just back up." Sandra laughed through her tears, a sound more sob than humor. Shadow jumped out of the patrol car and pressed against both of them, his tail wagging slowly. The three of them stood there in the driveway, tangled together, while Marcus watched from a respectful distance. A family, he thought. Broken in some ways, but stronger than most. His radio crackled. Dispatch informing him that Victor Crane was being transported to county lockup. That the FBI had been notified about potential elder fraud connections. That reporters were already calling. The story was just beginning. But for now, in this quiet moment, Marcus allowed himself to feel something rare. Victory. That night, Lily couldn't sleep. She lay in her bed, shadow stretched across her feet, staring at the ceiling. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the cellar, saw Harold and Eleanor huddled in the darkness, saw Victor's cold smile as he talked about killing them. But she also saw something else. Eleanor's face when the ambulance doors opened. Harold's hand reaching for hers, the tears of gratitude and disbelief in their eyes. "We did good, Shadow," she whispered into the darkness. The dog's tail thumped once against the blanket. "Grandma would have been proud of us. She always said courage isn't about not being scared. It's about doing what's right when you're most afraid." Shadow lifted his head and rested it on her leg. Lily closed her eyes. And somewhere in the quiet of Willowbrook, in a hospital room lit by monitors and hope, Eleanor Bennett opened her eyes and spoke her first coherent words in 4 days. "Harold! Harold, are we really safe?" Harold squeezed her hand, tears rolling down his weathered cheeks. "We're safe, Ellie. A little girl saved us. A little girl and her dog." Eleanor's eyes fluttered closed again, but a smile touched her lips. "An angel," she murmured. "God sent us an angel." And in the silence of that hospital room, Harold Bennett bowed his head and prayed. For Lily, for Shadow, for the second chance they had been given, and for the courage that had pulled them from the darkness. The hospital corridor smelled of antiseptic and fear. Sandra Parker had not slept. She sat in the plastic chair outside Eleanor Bennett's room. Her nursing scrubs wrinkled her eyes red from crying she refused to let Lily see. Across from her, Lily had finally dozed off, her small body curled against Shadow's warmth. The dog remained alert, his amber eyes tracking every nurse, every doctor, every stranger who passed. It was just past 3 a.m. when Deputy Marcus Reed appeared at the end of the hallway. Sandra straightened immediately. "Any news?" Marcus sat down beside her, keeping his voice low. "Victor Crane is in county lockup. He's lawyered up already. Some hotshot from Portland who specializes in getting rich people out of trouble. How can he afford that? I thought he was in debt." "That's what we're trying to figure out." Marcus rubbed his face with both hands. "His gambling debts are real. Over $400,000 to some very dangerous people. But somehow he had enough to retain one of the most expensive defense attorneys in the state." Sandra's jaw tightened. "Someone's helping him." "That's my guess too." The door to Eleanor's room opened. A doctor stepped out, her expression cautiously optimistic. "Mrs. Bennett is stable," she announced. "The insulin deprivation caused some complications, but we caught it in time. Another 12 hours, maybe less, and we'd be having a very different conversation." Sandra closed her eyes. Thank God. Mr. Bennett is with her now. He refuses to leave her side. The doctor glanced at the sleeping child and the vigilant dog. "Is that the little girl who found them?" Marcus nodded. The doctor's face softened. "We'd all like to thank her when she wakes up." What she did was extraordinary. She disappeared back into the room and silence settled over the corridor again. Marcus leaned closer to Sandra. "There's something else. Something I didn't want to say in front of Lily." Sandra's stomach dropped. "What?" "When we searched Victor's truck, we found documents. Financial records, estate plans, power of attorney forms. He'd been planning this for months, maybe longer." "That's not surprising. You said he wanted their money." "It's more than that." Marcus pulled out his phone and showed her a photograph. "We found this in his glove compartment." Sandra looked at the image. It was a handwritten list. Names, dates, amounts. "What am I looking at?" 4 other elderly couples in this county," Marcus said grimly. "All of them have substantial assets. All of them have been visited by Victor Crane in the past 6 months posing as a financial advisor." The blood drained from Sandra's face. He wasn't just targeting the Bennetts. No, he was building a network. The Bennetts were his trial run. If it worked, he was going to do this again and again. Sandra looked at her sleeping daughter, and something cold settled in her chest. Lily didn't just save 2 people tonight. She might have saved a lot more. Marcus stood up, his expression hardening. "I need to make some calls. The FBI is sending agents in the morning. This thing is bigger than our little department can handle." He paused at the end of the corridor and looked back. "Keep her close, Sandra. Until we know the full scope of what Victor was involved in, I don't want to take any chances." He disappeared around the corner, and Sandra was left alone with her fear. She reached over and stroked Lily's hair, watching her daughter's peaceful face in sleep. "What did you stumble into, baby?" she whispered. Shadow lifted his head and met Sandra's eyes. In that moment, she could have sworn the dog understood everything, and she was terrified. The sun rose over Willowbrook with an indifference that felt almost cruel. The town woke to rumors. A kidnapping, a rescue, an 8-year-old hero. Details were scarce, but speculation spread like wildfire through the coffee shops and church parking lots. By 8 a.m., 3 news vans had parked outside the hospital. By 9 a.m., reporters were knocking on Sandra Parker's door. Lily stood at her bedroom window watching the chaos unfold on her front lawn. Shadow sat beside her, his body tense. "They want to talk to me," Lily said quietly. Sandra appeared in the doorway. "You don't have to talk to anyone." "But what if it helps? What if telling people makes sure Victor stays in jail?" Sandra crossed the room and knelt beside her daughter. "Lily, listen to me. What you did yesterday was the bravest thing I've ever seen. But you're 8 years old. You don't have to carry this weight. Let the adults handle the rest." Lily turned from the window. Her green eyes, usually so bright, looked tired. Mom, when I was hiding behind that house, I heard Victor talking. He said he was going to make it look like an accident. He said old bones break easily. He was laughing about it. Sandra pulled Lily into her arms. I know, baby, I know. What if there are other people like him? What if there are other old people trapped somewhere waiting for someone to find them? Sandra had no answer. She held her daughter tighter and wished not for the first time that the world was kinder than it was. The doorbell rang. Shadow barked once, sharp and warning. Sandra released Lily and moved to the front door, her hand hesitating on the lock. Through the peephole, she saw Deputy Marcus Reed. Behind him stood a woman in a dark suit, her expression unreadable. Sandra opened the door. Sandra, this is Special Agent Diana Torres, Marcus said. FBI. She's heading up the investigation into Victor Crane. Agent Torres extended her hand. Ms. Parker, may we come in? The FBI agent sat across from Lily at the kitchen table. Shadow positioned himself between them, watchful. You're not in trouble, Lily. Agent Torres began, her voice professionally warm. In fact, you're quite the opposite. What you did yesterday saved 2 lives and uncovered what appears to be an interstate elder fraud operation. Lily blinked. Interstate D. Victor Crane has connections in 3 states: Oregon, Washington, and California. We believe he was working with partners we haven't identified yet. Sandra's hand found Lily's shoulder. What does this mean for my daughter? Right now, nothing. But we'd like Lily to walk us through exactly what she saw and heard yesterday. Every detail could be important. Lily looked at Shadow. The dog's tail thumped once against the floor. Okay, she said. I'll tell you everything. For the next hour, Lily recounted her story. The walk home from school, Shadow's strange behavior, the voice from the cellar, Victor's arrival, his words about accidents and broken bones, her desperate run to Deputy Reed's house. Agent Torres listened without interruption, her pen moving steadily across a notepad. When Lily finished, the agent leaned back. You said Victor mentioned signing papers. Did he say anything specific about what those papers were? Lily thought hard. He said something about accounts and property. He wanted them to sign everything over. Did he mention anyone else? Any names? Anyone who might be helping him? Lily closed her eyes, trying to remember. The fear had been so overwhelming. The details blurred together like watercolors in rain. Then suddenly a fragment surfaced. He was on the phone, she said, her eyes flying open. Before he went to the cellar, he was standing by his truck talking to someone. He said, everything is on schedule and the others won't be a problem. Agent Torres stopped writing. The others, that's what he said. The others won't be a problem. Torres exchanged a look with Marcus that made Sandra's blood run cold. What does that mean? Sandra demanded. It means Victor wasn't working alone, Torres said slowly, and it means we need to move faster than we planned. She stood up, already pulling out her phone. Deputy Reed, I need you to run those names again. The other couples on Victor's list. Check their current status. All of them. Right now. Marcus was already dialing. The next few hours passed in a blur of phone calls and tension. Lily sat on the living room floor with Shadow trying to distract herself with a book she couldn't focus on. Her mother paced between the kitchen and the front window, watching the reporters who still crowded the lawn. Deputy Marcus returned just before noon. His face was gray. We found them, he said quietly. Sandra stopped pacing. Found who? The Hendersons, Robert and Margaret. They're on Victor's list. Retired farmers from the east side of the county. No one's seen them in 3 days. Agent Torres was already moving toward the door. Where do they live? Old Mill Road, about 20 minutes from here. I'm coming with you. Agent Torres, with respect, this could be dangerous. If Victor has partners, that's exactly why I'm coming. Torres checked her weapon with practiced efficiency. Deputy, these people may have hours, not days. We don't have time for protocol. Sandra grabbed Marcus's arm. Be careful. Please. He nodded once, then followed Torres out the door. Lily watched them go, her chest tight with a familiar dread. Mom, she said quietly. Yes, baby. I think there are more. More than just the Bennetts and the Hendersons. Sandra knelt beside her. Why do you say that? Because Victor wasn't scared. When I was hiding when he was talking about killing them, he wasn't scared at all. He was confident, like he'd done this before. Sandra looked at her daughter, this child who had seen too much, understood too much. The FBI will find them, she said, praying it was true. Lily stroked Shadow's fur. I hope so. But deep in her heart, she knew the truth. This was only the beginning. The Henderson farmhouse looked peaceful from the road. White paint, red shutters, a tire swing hanging from an oak tree in the front yard. The kind of place that belonged in a Christmas card. Marcus pulled his patrol car to a stop behind Agent Torres's black SUV. They had driven separately silent, each lost in the grim possibilities ahead. No vehicles in the driveway, Torres observed. The Hendersons sold their car last year. Robert's eyesight got too bad for driving. They relied on their grandson for transportation. Grandson. Tyler Henderson, 26, lives in Portland but visits every few weeks. Torres checked her phone. Any criminal record? Nothing major. A few parking tickets. One DUI 3 years ago. They approached the front door. Torres knocked firmly. Mr. Henderson. Mrs. Henderson. This is the FBI. We're conducting a welfare check. Silence. Marcus moved to the window. The curtains were drawn, but through a gap he could see the living room. Furniture overturned. A broken lamp on the floor. We have a problem, he said quietly. Torres didn't hesitate. I'm going in. She kicked the door twice before the lock gave way. They entered with weapons drawn, clearing each room with practiced efficiency. The living room was destroyed. Signs of a struggle everywhere. Blood on the carpet near the couch. The kitchen was worse. Chairs toppled, a shattered plate on the floor, and on the table a half-written note in shaking handwriting. Marcus leaned close to read it. If anyone finds this, please know we tried to fight. Tyler brought a man, said we needed to sign papers. We refused. The note ended abruptly. A dark smear marked where the pen had fallen. They were here, Marcus breathed. They were right here. Torres was already on her radio. This is Torres. I need forensics at the Henderson residence on Old Mill Road immediately. Evidence of violent abduction. At least 2 victims. Possible accomplice identified as Tyler Henderson, age 26, current residence, Portland. She turned to Marcus. You said Victor mentioned partners. Tyler Henderson might be one of them. His own grandparents. Marcus said the words tasting like poison. He helped kidnap his own grandparents. Money makes people do unthinkable things. Torres holstered her weapon. The question is, where did they take them? Marcus looked around the destroyed kitchen, searching for any clue. His eyes landed on a calendar hanging by the refrigerator. Several dates were circled in red. He moved closer. One of the dates was tomorrow. Beside it, in neat handwriting, someone had written final transfer, warehouse. 3 p.m. Torres, he called. Look at this. The agent studied the calendar, her jaw tightening. Final transfer. That sounds like they're moving assets. Or victims. Torres nodded grimly. We need to find out where this warehouse is, and we need to find it before 3 p.m. tomorrow. Back at the hospital, Harold Bennett sat beside his wife's bed, holding her hand as he had for 55 years. Eleanor was awake now, weak but present. Her white curls lay flat against the pillow. Her reading glasses sat on the nightstand, waiting for eyes strong enough to use them again. Harold, she whispered, tell me about the girl again. He smiled softly. Lily. That was her name. Lily Parker. 8 years old. Brown hair and braids. Eyes like emeralds. And the dog. Shadow. A military dog. Retired. He found us Ellie. He heard something no human ear could hear, and he wouldn't give up until someone listened. Eleanor closed her eyes. I keep thinking about those 4 days. The darkness. The cold. Your voice was the only thing that kept me alive. And your voice kept me alive, Harold replied, his own eyes glistening. When you were too weak to speak, I talked enough for both of us. I told you every story I could remember, every moment of our life together. I heard you. Even when I couldn't answer, I heard you. They sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of what they had survived pressing down on them. Then Eleanor spoke again, her voice stronger now. "Victor." Harold's grip on her hand tightened. "Don't think about him." "I have to. He was our blood herald. We raised him. We loved him. How did we not see what he was becoming? Because we saw who he could have been. We saw the boy, not the monster." "Is he really a monster?" Eleanor's eyes opened, searching her husband's face. "Or did we fail him somehow?" "Ellie, no." Harold's voice was firm. "What Victor did was his choice, his greed, his cruelty. We gave him every opportunity. He chose this path himself." Eleanor was quiet for a long moment. Then she squeezed his hand. "I want to meet her, the girl who saved us. I want to look into her eyes and thank her properly." "You will," Harold promised. "When you're stronger, I'll make sure of it." A nurse appeared in the doorway. "Mr. Bennett, there's a Deputy Reed here to see you. He says it's urgent." Harold kissed Eleanor's forehead. "Rest, my love. I'll be right back." He found Marcus in the hallway, and one look at the deputy's face told him something was terribly wrong. "What is it?" Harold asked. "Victor wasn't working alone. We've found evidence linking him to at least one other abduction, an elderly couple named Henderson. They've been missing for 3 days." Harold's face went pale. "Robert and Margaret Henderson. We know them. They're members of our church." "Do you know their grandson, Tyler?" "Tyler." Harold's brow furrowed. "Of course. Nice young man. He helped organize the church picnic last summer. He introduced us to Victor." Marcus's blood ran cold. "Tyler introduced you to Victor?" "Yes, about 6 months ago. Said they'd met at some financial planning seminar. Victor offered to help us review our retirement accounts." The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. "Tyler Henderson was the connection," Marcus said slowly. "He was identifying targets for Victor, his own grandparents, your family. Who knows how many others?" Harold staggered backward, catching himself against the wall. "We invited him into our home," he whispered. "We fed him dinner. We trusted him." "Mr. Bennett, I need you to think carefully. Did Tyler or Victor ever mention any other names? Any other elderly couples they were planning to help?" Harold's mind raced through the memories, searching for anything useful. Then his eyes widened. The Walters. David and Grace Walter. Victor mentioned them once. Said they were next on his client list. "Do you know where they live?" "Cedar Lane, I think. The big blue house with the rose garden." Marcus was already on his phone. "Torres, I have another potential target. David and Grace Walter on Cedar Lane. I'm heading there now." He turned back to Harold. "Stay with your wife. Don't talk to anyone except hospital staff and Agent Torres. If Tyler Henderson contacts you, he won't get near us." Harold said, his voice hard in a way Marcus had never heard. "I promise you that." Marcus ran. The Walter residence was dark when Marcus arrived. No cars in the driveway, no lights in the windows. The rose garden that Harold had mentioned was overgrown, suggesting weeks of neglect. Marcus approached the front door with his hand on his weapon. He knocked loudly. "Mr. and Mrs. Walter, Willowbrook Sheriff's Department. We're conducting a welfare check." No response. He tried the doorbell. Nothing. Through the front window he could see mail piled inside the door. Newspapers scattered on the porch. "How long have you been gone?" Marcus murmured to himself. He radioed for backup and began circling the house, checking each window, each door. Everything was locked tight. No signs of forced entry. Then he reached the back of the property. A garden shed stood at the edge of the yard, its door hanging slightly open. Marcus approached slowly, weapon drawn. He pushed the door wide with his foot. Inside, he found what he'd been dreading. 2 chairs. Ropes cut and discarded on the floor. Dark stains on the concrete. And on the wall, scratched into the wood with desperate fingers, a message, "Help us. Tyler took us. Don't trust anyone." Marcus's heart hammered in his chest. The Walters had been here. They had been held in this shed, and then they had been moved. But to where? His phone buzzed. Agent Torres. "We got a hit on Tyler Henderson's phone," she said. "GPS puts him at an industrial complex on the outskirts of town. Old textile factory. Abandoned 5 years ago." "That's our warehouse," Marcus said. "I'm mobilizing a tactical team. ETA 30 minutes. The Hendersons might not have 30 minutes. Then I suggest you start driving, deputy." Marcus was in his car before she finished speaking. The textile factory loomed against the darkening sky like a monument to forgotten industry. Broken windows, rusted pipes, the kind of place where bad things happened and no one heard the screams. Marcus parked a quarter-mile away and approached on foot. Through his binoculars, he could see a white van parked near the loading dock. Movement inside one of the ground floor windows. 2 figures, maybe 3. And in the corner of the frame, bound and huddled together, he could make out the shapes of at least 2 elderly people. "Torres," he whispered into his radio. "I have visual confirmation. Multiple hostages. At least 2 hostiles. Hold your position. Tactical team is 15 minutes out." "I don't think we have 15 minutes. One of the hostiles is moving toward the hostages. He's carrying something." "What kind of something?" Marcus adjusted his binoculars. His blood turned to ice. "A gas can." Silence on the radio. Then Torres's voice tight with urgency. "Do not engage alone. I repeat, do not." But Marcus was already moving. He couldn't wait. He couldn't watch people burn while he followed protocol. That wasn't who he was. That wasn't why he became a deputy. He reached the loading dock and pressed himself against the wall. Through a crack in the door, he could see the interior more clearly now. Robert and Margaret Henderson sat tied to chairs in the center of the room. Beside them were David and Grace Walter. All 4 were gagged, their eyes wide with terror. Tyler Henderson stood over them, the gas can in his hands. A second man Marcus didn't recognize stood by the exit, smoking a cigarette. "Time to wrap this up," Tyler said, his voice casual. "Can't leave witnesses." "What about the money?" the other man asked. "Already transferred. Victor's lawyer set up the offshore accounts. Once these 4 are gone, there's nothing to trace back to us." He began pouring gasoline around the hostages. Margaret Henderson was crying. David Walter was struggling against his bonds. Grace had closed her eyes, her lips moving in silent prayer. Marcus made his decision. He burst through the door with his weapon raised. "Willowbrook Sheriff, drop the gas can and get on the ground." Tyler spun around, surprise flashing across his face. Then he smiled. "Deputy Reed, you're faster than we expected. I said drop it." Tyler's hand moved toward his waistband. Marcus fired. The bullet caught Tyler in the shoulder, spinning him around. The gas can fell, spilling fuel across the concrete floor. The second man reached for his weapon. Marcus fired again. The man went down, clutching his legs, screaming. For one long moment, the only sound was the hostages' muffled sobs and the distant wail of approaching sirens. Then Marcus was moving, cutting the ropes, pulling the gags free, helping the elderly couples to their feet. "It's over," he said, his voice shaking. "You're safe now." Robert Henderson grabbed his arm, tears streaming down his weathered face. "Our grandson," he whispered. "Our own grandson did this to us." Marcus had no words of comfort. He had no wisdom to offer. All he had was the truth. "I know, sir. I'm so sorry." The sirens grew louder. Blue and red lights painted the warehouse walls. And Marcus Reed stood among the wreckage of broken families and shattered trust, wondering how the world had become so cruel. But even in that moment, he thought of Lily Parker, an 8-year-old girl who had heard a voice and refused to ignore it. A child who had trusted her instincts when adults would have walked away. She had started this. She had unraveled a conspiracy that reached further than anyone imagined, and because of her 4 more lives had been saved tonight. Marcus looked at the elderly couples, battered but alive, clinging to each other with the desperate strength of survivors. "You have someone to thank," he told them quietly. "When this is over, there's a little girl you need to meet." Robert Henderson nodded, understanding dawning in his eyes. "The one who found the Bennetts. The one who saved all of you." Robert closed his eyes. "God bless her," he whispered. "God bless that child." And somewhere across town, in a modest house on Maple Avenue, Lily Parker sat awake in her bed, Shadow's warm body pressed against her side. She didn't know what was happening at the warehouse. She didn't know how many lives had been saved because she had listened to a voice in the darkness. But she felt something, a quiet certainty settling in her chest. This wasn't over yet, and somehow she knew she still had a part to play. The news broke at dawn. Every television in Willowbrook carried the same footage. The warehouse, the ambulances, 4 elderly survivors being loaded onto stretchers while FBI agents swarmed the scene. Tyler Henderson in handcuffs, his face twisted with rage. The second man, identified as Derek Simmons, being dragged toward a patrol car, with blood still seeping from his wounded leg. But it was the words scrolling across the bottom of the screen that made Sandra Parker's blood freeze. Authorities believe additional conspirators remain at large. Public urged to report suspicious activity. She turned off the television and looked at Lily, who sat at the kitchen table pretending to eat breakfast. Shadow lay at her feet, his eyes never leaving the front door. "Mom," Lily said quietly, "are the bad people all caught?" Sandra wanted to lie. She wanted to wrap her daughter in certainty and safety. But Lily had earned the truth. "Not all of them, baby. Not yet." Lily nodded slowly. "That's what I thought." The doorbell rang. Shadow was on his feet before the sound finished echoing. His growl rumbled low in his chest, the kind of warning that came from instinct older than training. Sandra moved to the door, her hand reaching for the baseball bat she now kept in the umbrella stand. Through the peephole, she saw Agent Torres. She opened the door. Torres stepped inside quickly, her eyes scanning the room before settling on Lily. "We need to talk, all of us." They gathered in the living room. Torres sat on the edge of the couch, her posture rigid with tension. "Victor Crane made a phone call from county lockup last night," she began. "To his lawyer, we assumed. Standard procedure. But we traced the call. It didn't go to the law firm." Sandra's hand found Lily's shoulder. "Where did it go?" "A burner phone. Location traced to somewhere in this town. Someone here is still helping him." Lily's grip tightened on Shadow's collar. "Who?" "We don't know yet. But Victor said something during the call that concerns me." Torres pulled out her phone and played a recording, the audio crackly but audible. Victor's voice, calm and cold. "The girl is a problem. The one with the dog. She saw too much. She knows too much. Handle it." The silence that followed was deafening. Sandra pulled Lily against her chest. "You're threatening my daughter, an 8-year-old child." "We're not threatening anyone, Ms. Parker. We're warning you. Someone in Victor's network has been tasked with silencing Lily. Until we identify who that is, your daughter is in danger." Lily looked up at her mother, her green eyes steady despite the fear. "I'm not scared of him." "You should be," Torres said gently. "Victor Crane has nothing left to lose. That makes him more dangerous than ever." Marcus Reed arrived within the hour. He had not slept. The warehouse operation had stretched through the night, and the paperwork alone would take days. But when Torres called and told him about the threat against Lily, he was in his car before she finished speaking. Now he stood in Sandra Parker's living room, his jaw set with determination. "I'm assigning a patrol car to this house around the clock," he announced. 2 officers rotating shifts. No one gets in or out without identification." "For how long?" Sandra asked. "Until we catch whoever Victor called." Lily tugged at Marcus's sleeve. "Deputy Reed." He knelt to her level. "Yeah, kid. Can I help?" "Maybe I remember something else. Something that could tell you who the other bad guy is." Marcus smiled despite everything. "You've already helped more than anyone could expect. Right now your job is to stay safe. Let us handle the rest." But Lily's eyes drifted to Shadow, and something unspoken passed between them. She wasn't done yet. She couldn't be. The first hint came that afternoon. Lily was sitting by her bedroom window, Shadow beside her as always when she noticed something strange. A car she didn't recognize had parked across the street. A silver sedan with tinted windows. The driver hadn't gotten out. "Mom," Lily called. Sandra appeared in the doorway. "What is it?" "That car. It's been there for an hour, just sitting." Sandra's face went pale. She pulled out her phone and dialed Marcus immediately. "There's a car watching our house." Silver sedan. I can't see the driver. Within minutes, the patrol car assigned to their protection pulled alongside the sedan. One officer approached the driver's side window. Lily watched, her heart pounding. The officer knocked on the window. It rolled down. Words were exchanged. Then the officer stepped back, and the sedan pulled away slowly. Too slowly. The patrol officer returned to Sandra's door moments later. False alarm, ma'am. Driver said he was a real estate agent checking properties in the neighborhood. Sandra didn't believe it. At 3 p.m., in a car with tinted windows. For an hour. The officer shrugged. We got his ID, ran the plates, everything checked out. But Sandra saw the doubt in his eyes, and she knew with a mother's certainty that something was very wrong. That night, Lily couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, shadow stretched across her legs, listening to every creak of the house. The wind outside, the distant hum of the patrol car's engine, her mother's footsteps pacing in the living room. Shadow, she whispered. Do you feel it too? The dog's ears twitched. He was awake, alert, ready. Lily thought about Harold and Eleanor Bennett, about 4 days in darkness, waiting for death, about the moment she pressed her ear to that cellar door and heard a voice begging for help. She hadn't hesitated then. She couldn't hesitate now. If someone comes, she told Shadow, you protect Mom. Okay, you protect her no matter what. Shadow's tail thumped once against the blanket. Agreement. The clock on her nightstand read 2:47 a.m. when she heard it. A sound that didn't belong. Not the wind, not the house settling. Something deliberate. Something human. Footsteps in the backyard. Lily sat up, her heart hammering. Shadow was already on his feet, his body rigid, his growl rising from deep in his chest. Mom! Lily screamed. Sandra burst through the door in seconds. What? What is it? Someone's outside, in the back. Sandra grabbed her phone and dialed 911 with shaking hands. This is Sandra Parker, 412 Maple Avenue. Someone is trying to break into my house. Please send help. The operator's voice was calm, professional. Ma'am, stay on the line. Officers are being dispatched. But the footsteps were getting closer. Shadow launched himself toward the bedroom door, positioning himself between the family and whatever was coming. His barking filled the house, sharp and furious. Then the back door crashed open. Sandra pushed Lily behind her. Stay back, baby. Stay behind me. A figure appeared in the hallway. Tall, dressed in black, face covered by a ski mask, and in his hand, a gun. Don't scream, the intruder said, his voice muffled. Don't fight. This doesn't have to be messy. Sandra's voice shook, but she didn't back down. Get out of my house. Can't do that. Victor sends his regards. He raised the gun. Shadow moved. 70 pounds of trained muscle launched through the air with perfect precision. Teeth found the intruder's gun arm clamping down with crushing force. The man screamed, the weapon flying from his grip. Sandra grabbed Lily and ran for the front door. Behind them, Shadow fought with everything he had. The intruder kicked and punched, trying to break free. But Shadow had been trained for moments exactly like this. He had faced worse in Afghanistan. He would not let go. Sandra threw open the front door and screamed for the patrol officers. They were already running. One officer tackled the intruder as Shadow finally released his grip. The second officer helped Sandra and Lily into the patrol car, shielding them with his body. Within minutes, the street was flooded with sirens. Agent Torres arrived as the intruder was being loaded into an ambulance. His arm mangled, his face finally revealed. Sandra didn't recognize him, but Torres did. Richard Crane, Torres said grimly. Victor's cousin. Apparently family loyalty runs deep in the worst possible way. Sandra held Lily so tight it must have hurt. He came to kill my daughter. To kill an 8-year-old girl. He won't get the chance again. Victor's entire network is collapsing. This was a desperate move. A final attempt to eliminate the one witness who started everything. Lily looked up at Torres, her face streaked with tears. Is it over now? Torres hesitated. Almost, sweetheart. Almost. but almost wasn't enough. Not for Lily. Not for any of them. The hospital room was quiet when Lily arrived the next morning. Harold Bennett sat beside his wife's bed, their hands intertwined as always. Eleanor was awake, her color better than before, her eyes brighter. When she saw Lily in the doorway, her face transformed with emotion. "There she is," Eleanor whispered. "Our angel." Lily approached slowly, Shadow at her side. She wasn't sure why Marcus had brought her here. Wasn't sure what she was supposed to say. But Harold rose from his chair and crossed the room. He knelt before her, his weathered hands taking hers. "Lily Parker," he said, his voice thick with tears. "I have lived 78 years. I have seen wars and presidents and grandchildren born. But I have never in all my life witnessed courage like yours." Lily's chin trembled. "I was just walking home. Shadow found you. I didn't do anything special." "You listened," Eleanor said from her bed. "When the whole world walked past that cellar, you listened. That's the most special thing anyone can do." Harold pulled something from his pocket, a small wooden cross on a leather cord. "This belonged to my father. He carried it through World War II. He gave it to me when I married Eleanor, and I've worn it every day since. I want you to have it." Lily's eyes widened. "I can't take that. It's too important." "It's important because of what it represents. Faith, courage, the willingness to do what's right when everything tells you to walk away." Harold pressed it into her palm. "You've earned it, Lily, more than anyone I've ever known." Lily looked at the cross, then at Shadow, then at the elderly couple who were watching her with such gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'll keep it safe. Forever." Eleanor reached out her hand. Lily crossed the room and took it. "We heard about last night," Eleanor said softly, "about the man who came to your house. Are you all right?" Lily nodded. "Shadow protected us. He's the real hero." "Heroes come in all forms," Harold said. "Two-legged and four-legged alike." He looked at Shadow, who sat at attention beside Lily's legs. "Thank you too," Harold said to the dog, "for everything." Shadow's tail wagged once. In that moment, something shifted in the room, a connection that went beyond words. 4 survivors bound together by darkness and saved by light. And at the center of it all, a little girl who had simply refused to look away. The arraignment happened 3 days later. Victor Crane stood in the courtroom, his orange jumpsuit a stark contrast to the expensive suits he once wore. His lawyer sat beside him, shuffling papers, avoiding eye contact with the families filling the gallery. Harold and Eleanor Bennett were there. Eleanor in a wheelchair, Harold standing behind her with his hand on her shoulder. Robert and Margaret Henderson sat nearby, their faces still bearing the bruises of their captivity. David and Grace Walter held hands, their expressions haunted but determined. And in the back row, Sandra Parker sat with her daughter. Lily wore her grandmother's cardigan. Around her neck hung Harold's wooden cross. Shadow lay at her feet, calm but alert. The judge entered and everyone rose. "This court is now in session, the matter of the people versus Victor James Crane." Victor's lawyer spoke first, requesting bail. The prosecutor responded with a list of charges that seemed to go on forever. Kidnapping, attempted murder, elder abuse, financial exploitation, conspiracy, assault on a law enforcement officer. When the prosecutor finished, the judge turned to Victor. "Mr. Crane, you face charges that could result in multiple life sentences. How do you plead?" Victor stood. His eyes swept the courtroom, landing briefly on Lily. She didn't look away. "Not guilty," Victor said, his voice flat. A murmur rippled through the gallery. Harold's grip on Eleanor's wheelchair tightened. The judge nodded. "Bail is denied. The defendant will remain in custody pending trial. Court is adjourned." As Victor was led away in handcuffs, he turned one last time. His eyes found Lily again. And he smiled. It was the smile of a man who had lost everything but still believed he could win. The smile of someone who saw obstacles, not consequences. who saw enemies, not victims. Lily felt a chill run down her spine. But she kept her chin up, she kept her eyes steady, and she did not look away. Outside the courthouse, the autumn sun felt warm against Lily's face. Reporters swarmed the steps shouting questions at the families. Marcus Reed and Agent Torres formed a barrier, giving everyone space to breathe. Harold approached Lily one last time. "That took courage," he said, "facing him like that." "He smiled at me," Lily replied, "like he thinks he's going to get away with everything. He won't. The evidence is overwhelming. The FBI has traced his network across 3 states. His lawyer can delay, but he can't escape." "Promise." Harold knelt down, his old knees creaking in protest. "I promise you, Lily Parker, Victor Crane will spend the rest of his life in prison, because of what you did, because of who you are." Eleanor rolled her wheelchair closer. "And when this is all over, we want you and your mother to come visit us. Our new cottage has a garden that needs planting. I think Shadow would love it." Lily smiled for the first time in days. "Can we really? Your family now?" Eleanor said simply. "That's what family does." Sandra approached, her arm around Lily's shoulders. "I think we'd like that very much." The ride home was quiet. Sandra drove slowly, her mind still processing everything that had happened. Lily sat in the back seat with Shadow, watching the familiar streets of Willowbrook pass by. "Mom." "Yes, baby." "Do you think bad people ever change, like really change?" Sandra considered the question carefully. "I think some people can, but it's hard. It takes a lot of work and a lot of wanting to be different." "What about Victor? Do you think he could ever be sorry for what he did?" "I don't know, sweetheart. I really don't know." Lily was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that made Sandra's heart ache. "I hope he can. Not because he deserves forgiveness, but because hating him forever sounds really tiring." Sandra looked at her daughter in the rearview mirror. 8 years old, wiser than most adults she knew. "You're something special, Lily Parker." "I know," Lily said with a small smile. "You tell me every day." That night, for the first time in a week, Lily slept peacefully. Shadow lay beside her, his breathing slow and steady. The patrol car still sat outside, but its presence felt less urgent now. The immediate danger had passed. But as Lily drifted into dreams, she didn't know that the story was far from over. 200 miles away, in a federal detention facility, Victor Crane sat in his cell staring at the ceiling. His lawyer had visited earlier with bad news. Richard's arrest had been the final blow. The evidence was mounting. The case against him was airtight. But Victor wasn't thinking about lawyers or evidence. He was thinking about an 8-year-old girl, a girl who had walked past that cellar every day for months and never noticed anything. Until she did, until her dog pulled her toward the truth. One random afternoon, one moment of curiosity, and his entire empire crumbled. Victor closed his eyes. He could still see her face in the courtroom. The way she looked at him without fear, the wooden cross around her neck, the dog at her feet. She was 8 years old, and she had destroyed everything. Victor smiled in the darkness, not because he had a plan, but because he finally understood something that had eluded him his entire life. Power didn't come from money or manipulation. Power came from the willingness to act when everyone else looked away. That little girl had more power than he ever would, and that more than anything was what kept him awake at night. Back in Willowbrook, the first frost arrived with the morning. Lily woke to find ice crystals on her window. The world transformed into something quiet and beautiful. Shadow stretched beside her, his old bones creaking slightly as he rose. "Cold today," Lily said, scratching behind his ears. "Want to go for a walk?" His tail wagged. They found Sandra in the kitchen making pancakes. The normalcy of it felt strange after everything that had happened, but strange in a good way. Strange like healing. "Deputy Reed called," Sandra said, flipping a pancake with practiced ease. "They've officially closed the case on the other couples. Everyone has been accounted for. Everyone is safe." "Because of us?" Lily asked, climbing onto a kitchen stool. "Because of you," Sandra corrected. And shadow. And your refusal to walk away when something felt wrong. Lily looked at her dog. He's the one who heard them first. And you're the one who listened to him. Sandra set a plate of pancakes in front of her daughter. That's what makes a team. Different strengths working together. They ate in comfortable silence, the morning light growing stronger through the kitchen window. When they finished, Lily asked the question that had been building in her chest for days. Mom, can we go back there? To the old mansion? Sandra's face tightened. Why would you want to do that? I don't know. I just feel like I need to. Like there's something I need to see. Sandra studied her daughter's face, searching for signs of trauma or obsession. But all she saw was determination. The same determination that had saved 6 lives. All right, she said finally, but I'm coming with you. And so is Deputy Reed. Lily nodded. Okay. An hour later, they stood before the Hartwell mansion. The police tape had been removed. The cellar doors had been replaced with a padlock and chain. The house looked even more abandoned than before, if that was possible. Marcus stood beside them, his hand resting on his service weapon out of habit. What are you looking for, Lily? She didn't answer. Instead, she walked toward the cellar shadow at her side. She stopped at the spot where she had first heard Eleanor's voice. The ground was trampled now, marked by the footprints of investigators and rescue workers. But underneath it all, the earth remained the same. Lily knelt down. Right here, she said softly. This is where I heard them. She pressed her palm against the cold ground. They were so scared, so alone, and nobody knew. The whole world just kept going and nobody knew they were dying down there. Sandra crouched beside her daughter. But you found them, baby. You changed everything. What if I hadn't walked this way? What if Shadow hadn't been with me? What if I had been wearing headphones or talking on the phone or doing anything else? Marcus answered gently. Then someone else might have found them. Or maybe no one would have. We can't know. But that's not what happened. You were here. You were listening. And that's what matters. Lily looked up at the broken windows of the mansion. I want to help other people like the Bennetts. People who are trapped and alone and waiting for someone to hear them. Sandra pulled her close. You're 8 years old, sweetheart. You have plenty of time to figure out how to help the world. But I want to start now. Lily's voice was firm. I want to learn how Shadow does what he does. I want to train other dogs. I want to teach kids to listen. Marcus and Sandra exchanged a look. Then Marcus smiled. You know what, kid, I think that's the best idea I've heard in a long time. They drove back through Willowbrook as the sun climbed higher. The town looked different now, softer somehow, as if the darkness that had lurked beneath its surface had been exposed and expelled. Lily watched the familiar streets pass by her hand, resting on Shadow's warm fur. She thought about Harold and Eleanor rebuilding their lives in a new cottage, about the Hendersons and the Walters healing from wounds that would never fully disappear, about Victor Crane locked away where he couldn't hurt anyone else. And she thought about herself, an 8-year-old girl who had stumbled into something terrible and found something beautiful on the other side. Mom, she said as they pulled into their driveway. Yes, baby. I think everything's going to be okay now. Sandra smiled, her eyes glistening. I think you're right. They walked into the house together, Shadow leading the way. And in the warmth of their kitchen, surrounded by the smell of the pancakes they'd left behind, they began to believe that some stories really do have happy endings. But for Lily Parker, this wasn't an ending at all. It was just the beginning. The trial began on a Tuesday morning in November. Willowbrook County Courthouse had never seen crowds like this. Reporters from 3 states filled the press gallery. Families of victims occupied every available seat. The curious and the concerned lined the hallways, waiting for any scrap of information. Inside the courtroom, Victor Crane sat at the defense table, his expression carefully neutral. Gone was the arrogance of his first appearance. His lawyer had coached him well. Show remorse, show humanity, give the jury a reason to doubt. But the evidence against him was overwhelming. Agent Torres had spent weeks building the case. Financial records, phone logs, testimony from Tyler Henderson, who had taken a plea deal in exchange for full cooperation. The conspiracy stretched across 3 states, involving over $2 million in stolen assets and at least 6 elderly victims. Victor Crane had been the mastermind, and today the prosecution would prove it. Lily sat in the gallery between her mother and Deputy Marcus Reed. She wore her grandmother's cardigan, Harold's wooden cross visible at her collar. Shadow lay at her feet, calm but watchful. The judge entered, and everyone rose. This court is now in session. The People versus Victor James Crane. Opening statements will begin. The prosecutor, a sharp-eyed woman named Catherine Wells, stood first. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you will hear testimony over the coming days that will disturb you. You will learn how the defendant systematically targeted elderly couples in our community, how he used family connections to gain their trust, how he imprisoned them in darkness, starved them, threatened them, and fully intended to kill them once he had stolen everything they owned. She paused, letting her words sink in. You will also hear about courage, about an 8-year-old girl who heard a cry for help when the whole world walked past, about a retired military dog whose training never faded, about a deputy who risked his life to save strangers. This case is about the worst of humanity, but it is also about the best. Victor's lawyer, a silver-haired man named Harrison Price, rose next. My client made mistakes, serious mistakes, but he is not a monster. He is a man who fell into debt, who panicked, who made choices he deeply regrets. The prosecution will paint him as a mastermind, but the truth is far more complicated. Victor Crane was a pawn in a larger operation manipulated by others desperate to escape a situation that had spiraled beyond his control. Lily's hands clenched in her lap. Pawn. The word tasted like poison. Victor Crane was no pawn. She had heard his voice at the cellar, heard him laugh about broken bones and accidents. He knew exactly what he was doing, and she would make sure the jury knew it too. The first witness was Harold Bennett. He walked to the stand slowly, his cane tapping against the floor. Eleanor watched from her wheelchair in the front row, her hands clasped in silent prayer. Mr. Bennett, the prosecutor began, can you describe your relationship with the defendant? Harold looked at Victor. For a long moment, neither man blinked. Victor is my nephew, my brother's son. When his parents struggled with addiction, my wife and I took him in. We raised him from age 7 until he left for college. We loved him like our own. And how did the defendant repay that love? Harrison Price stood. Objection. Leading. Sustained. Rephrase. Mr. Bennett, can you describe what happened on October 15th of this year? Harold's voice grew stronger. Victor came to our home. He said he wanted to discuss our retirement accounts. We had no reason to suspect anything. We invited him in. We made him coffee. His voice cracked. We trusted him. What happened next? He pulled a gun. He said we were going to take a little trip. He bound our hands and put hoods over our heads. When we woke up, we were in that cellar. How long were you held captive? 4 days. 4 days without light, without proper food, without my wife's insulin. Harold's eyes glistened. Eleanor nearly died. She would have died if that little girl hadn't found us. Objection, Price called. The witness is speculating. Overruled. The medical evidence supports his statement, Harold continued. Victor came every day. He brought just enough food to keep us alive. He told us we were going to sign over everything. Our home, our savings, our life insurance policies. And then he was going to kill us. Did he use those exact words? He said, old bones break easily. He said he would make it look like an accident. He said no one would ever know. Harold's voice broke completely. He looked at my wife, the woman I've loved for 55 years, and he smiled while he said it. The courtroom was silent. Lily felt tears running down her cheeks. Beside her, Sandra gripped her hand so hard it hurt. No further questions, the prosecutor said. Price rose for cross-examination. Mr. Bennett, isn't it true that you and my client had financial disagreements in the past? Disagreements. Victor asked us for money multiple times. We helped when we could, but we also said no when we couldn't afford it. And those refusals caused tension between you. Tension, yes, not attempted murder. A murmur rippled through the gallery. Price pressed on. Isn't it possible that my client's actions were driven by desperation rather than malice, that he never truly intended to hurt you? Harold stared at the lawyer for a long moment. I heard him describe how he planned to kill us. I watched him pour gasoline around other people's grandparents. There was no desperation in his voice. There was pleasure. He turned to look directly at Victor. You wanted us dead. You wanted all of us dead. And the only reason we're alive is because of a child who cared more about strangers than you cared about family. Price sat down without another question. The trial continued for 3 days. Witness after witness took the stand. Robert Henderson described his grandson Tyler's betrayal with tears streaming down his face. Margaret Henderson had to be helped from the courtroom after breaking down during her testimony. David Walter spoke of the terror of being held in that garden shed, waiting for death. Grace Walter was the one who broke the case wide open. There was a fourth person, she said quietly from the stand. The prosecutor leaned forward. A fourth person, beyond Victor Tyler and Derek Simmons. Yes, I heard them talking when they thought we were unconscious. Victor called him the accountant. He said the accountant was handling the money, moving it somewhere untraceable. The courtroom buzzed with whispers. Agent Torres, seated in the gallery, was already on her phone. Did you hear a name? The prosecutor pressed. Whitmore. They called him Whitmore. At the defense table, Victor Crane's carefully neutral expression flickered. Just for a second. But Lily saw it. And she knew that name meant something. The recess that followed was chaos. Torres cornered the prosecutor in the hallway. We need to find this Whitmore, now. If there's a fourth conspirator still at large, this whole case could be compromised. Can we delay the trial? No, we push forward with Victor. Let him think we don't know about Whitmore. Meanwhile, I'll have my team digging. Marcus approached Lily and Sandra. This isn't over. There's someone else out there. Lily looked up at him. The accountant. Yeah, whoever's been moving the money. We never found it. Over $2 million and it vanished into thin air. Will they come after us like Richard Crane did? Marcus knelt to her level. I won't let that happen. I promise you, Lily, no one is going to hurt you or your mom again. But even as he said it, Lily saw the worry in his eyes. Promises were fragile things, and accountants, she suspected, were very good at hiding. The prosecution rested on Thursday afternoon. Victor Crane took the stand the next morning. He had dressed carefully. Simple suit, humble expression. The arrogance that Lily remembered from the cellar was nowhere to be seen. Mr. Crane, his lawyer began, can you explain in your own words what led to these events? Victor cleared his throat. I was in trouble, deep trouble. I owed money to people who don't accept excuses. They threatened my life, threatened my family. I was desperate. And this desperation led you to target elderly relatives. I never wanted to hurt anyone. I just needed the money to make the threats stop. I thought if I could get my uncle and aunt to loan me the funds just temporarily, I could pay off my debts and everything would go back to normal. But that's not what happened. No. Victor lowered his head. Things spiraled. Tyler introduced me to Derek, who had connections. They convinced me that a loan wouldn't be enough, that I needed to think bigger. Before I knew it, I was in too deep to get out. Lily's stomach churned. He was lying. Every word was a lie, and he was good at it. Do you regret your actions? Price asked. Every day. Every single day. I look at my uncle and aunt and I hate what I became. I hate that I let fear and greed turn me into someone I don't recognize. He looked at Harold and Eleanor in the gallery. I'm sorry, I know that doesn't fix anything, but I am truly deeply sorry. Eleanor's face remained stone. Harold shook his head slowly. The prosecutor rose for cross-examination. Mr. Crane, you claim you never intended to harm anyone. Is that correct? That's correct. Then can you explain this recording? She pressed a button on her laptop. Victor's voice filled the courtroom crystal clear. Old bones break easily. Make it look like an accident. No witnesses. Victor's composure cracked. I was trying to scare them. You never actually what Mr. Crane planned to kill 6 elderly people after stealing their life savings. I didn't. You poured gasoline around hostages, Mr. Crane. You aimed a weapon at a law enforcement officer. You sent your cousin to murder an 8-year-old child in her own home. I never told Richard to do that. Phone records show you called him from county lockup and said, quote, "The girl is a problem. Handle it." What exactly did you mean by handle it? Mr. Crane. Victor's jaw clenched. The mask was slipping. I meant scare her. Warn her to stay quiet. Scare an 8-year-old with a gun in the middle of the night. I didn't know he would. You didn't know he would follow your orders. The orders you gave from a jail cell because you were too cowardly to face the consequences of your own actions. Price shot to his feet. Objection, argumentative. Withdrawn. The prosecutor smiled coldly. No further questions. Victor stepped down from the stand, his face flushed with barely contained rage. As he passed the gallery, his eyes found Lily's. The mask was gone now. In its place was pure hatred. Lily didn't look away. She held his gaze until he was forced to turn forward. And in that moment, she knew the jury had seen his true face. Closing arguments came on Monday. The prosecutor spoke for 90 minutes, weaving together every piece of evidence into an unbreakable chain. She showed photos of the cellar, played recordings of Victor's threats, read Eleanor's medical records documenting how close she came to death. She ended with a simple statement. Victor Crane is not a desperate man who made mistakes. He is a predator who targeted the most vulnerable members of our community. He exploited trust, he weaponized family, and he fully intended to murder 6 innocent people for money. The evidence is clear. The victim's testimony is clear. Justice demands a verdict of guilty on all counts. Price countered with an appeal to mercy. My client is not a monster. He is a man who lost his way. A man who was manipulated by others more cunning than himself. A man who deserves punishment, yes, but not the kind of destruction the prosecution seeks. Victor Crane is already destroyed. Look at him. He has lost everything. His family, his reputation, his freedom. What more can we take from him? The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they returned, Lily held her breath. The foreman stood. On the count of kidnapping in the 1st degree, we find the defendant guilty. Harold closed his eyes. On the count of attempted murder, we find the defendant guilty. Eleanor began to cry. On the count of elder abuse, we find the defendant guilty. Margaret Henderson grabbed her husband's hand. On the count of financial exploitation, we find the defendant guilty. David and Grace Walter bowed their heads in prayer. On the count of assault on a law enforcement officer, we find the defendant guilty. Marcus exhaled slowly. On the count of conspiracy to commit murder, we find the defendant guilty. Victor Crane stared at the table in front of him, his face blank. This court will reconvene in 2 weeks for sentencing, the judge announced. The defendant is remanded to custody without bail. As the bailiffs led Victor away, the courtroom erupted. Families embraced. Reporters shouted questions. Camera flashes exploded like lightning. But Lily sat perfectly still, Shadow's head resting on her knee. It's over, Sandra whispered, pulling her daughter close. Lily shook her head slowly. Not yet. There's still the accountant. Sandra looked at Marcus, who nodded grimly. She's right. We're still looking for Whitmore. Whoever he is, he's got $2 million and a very good reason to stay hidden. But Victor's going to prison. That's what matters right now. Marcus squeezed Lily's shoulder. Your mom's right. Today we celebrate. Tomorrow we keep fighting. Lily looked at the empty defense table where Victor had sat. Then she looked at the Bennetts surrounded by friends and family in gratitude. Then she looked at Shadow. Okay, she said finally. But we're not done. No, Marcus agreed. We're not done. The sentencing hearing arrived with the first snow of December. Willowbrook woke to a thin blanket of white softening the edges of the world. The courthouse looked almost peaceful, its stone walls dusted with frost. Inside, the atmosphere was anything but peaceful. Every seat was filled. Every eye was fixed on Victor Crane, who sat at the defense table for the last time. The judge entered, her expression solemn. Before I announce the sentence, the court will hear victim impact statements. Mr. Bennett, you may proceed. Harold walked to the podium with Eleanor at his side, her wheelchair pushed slowly across the floor. Your Honor, Harold began, my wife and I have been married for 55 years. We've survived cancer. We've survived the loss of a child. We've survived everything life could throw at us, but nothing prepared us for the betrayal of our own blood. He paused, gathering himself. Victor was 7 years old when he came to live with us. He was scared and angry and broken. We thought love could fix him. We were wrong. Love couldn't compete with greed. Family couldn't compete with money. Eleanor spoke next, her voice thin but steady. I almost died in that cellar. I felt my body shutting down. I felt the darkness closing in. And in those final hours, all I could think about was Harold, about the life we'd built together, about the grandchildren we'd never see again. She looked at Victor. I forgive you, Victor. Not because you deserve it, but because carrying hatred is too heavy for my old heart. I forgive you, and I pray that somewhere in that prison cell you find the humanity you lost. Victor didn't respond. His face remained blank, empty. The judge turned to the other victims. Robert Henderson spoke of his grandson's betrayal. Margaret described the nightmares that still woke her screaming. David Walter talked about the fear that would never fully leave him. Grace Walter said only one thing. I hope you remember our faces, every night, for the rest of your life. When the statements concluded, the judge addressed Victor directly. Mr. Crane, you have been found guilty of crimes that shock the conscience of this community. You preyed upon the elderly. You exploited trust. You showed no mercy to your victims, and you have shown no genuine remorse in this courtroom. She looked at the papers before her. For the crime of kidnapping in the first degree, I sentence you to 20 years. For attempted murder, 20 years. For elder abuse, 10 years. For financial exploitation, 10 years. For assault on a law enforcement officer, 5 years. For conspiracy to commit murder, 15 years. She set down the papers. These sentences will run consecutively. Victor James Crane, you are hereby sentenced to 80 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. Victor's lawyer slumped in his chair. Victor himself showed no reaction. Additionally, the judge continued, all assets recovered from your criminal enterprise will be returned to your victims, with the remainder donated to elder protection services in this county. She struck her gavel. This court is adjourned. May God have mercy on your soul, Mr. Crane, because this court has none left to give. The celebration at the Bennett cottage lasted well into the evening. Harold had insisted on hosting everyone who had helped bring Victor to justice. The Hendersons came still healing, but determined to move forward. The Walters brought flowers from the garden they were slowly rebuilding. Marcus arrived with a bottle of sparkling cider and Sandra on his arm. And Lily came with Shadow, the wooden cross, hanging proudly at her collar. This is a day I thought might never come, Harold announced, raising his glass. 8 weeks ago, my wife and I were trapped in darkness, waiting to die. Today, we're surrounded by family, by friends, by the incredible people who saved our lives. He looked at Lily. Some heroes wear capes, some wear badges, and some wear their grandmother's cardigan and walk to school with a dog named Shadow. Everyone laughed. Lily blushed. To Lily Parker, Harold said, and to everyone who refused to look away. To Lily, the room echoed. Later, as the guests mingled and the conversation flowed, Marcus found Sandra standing by the window watching the snow fall. Penny, for your thoughts. She smiled softly. I'm thinking about how different everything is now. A month ago, I was working double shifts and worrying about bills. Now my daughter is a local hero and I'm, well, dating a deputy. Sandra laughed. Is that what we're calling it? I'd like to call it that, if you're okay with it. She turned to face him, her expression serious. My life is complicated, Marcus. I have a daughter who attracts danger like a magnet. I work nights. I'm still figuring out who I am without my mother. I know. Are you sure you want to sign up for all of that? Marcus took her hands. Sandra, I've spent my whole career trying to protect people I don't know. Strangers in crisis. Victims I meet once and never see again. But these past weeks watching you and Lily, I realized something. I want to protect people I love. People who matter to me. If you'll let me. Sandra's eyes glistened. That's a pretty big speech for a first date. I've been practicing. She laughed again, the sound lighter now. Okay, Deputy Reed, let's see where this goes. Across the room, Lily watched them with a small smile. They like each other, she told Shadow. I think that's good, right? Shadow's tail wagged. Agreement. As the evening wound down, Eleanor beckoned Lily to her side. I have something for you, she said, reaching into her pocket. I've been waiting for the right moment. She pulled out a small velvet box. This was my mother's locket. She gave it to me on my wedding day. I held it every single hour we were in that cellar. I prayed over it. I believed because of it that someone would come. She pressed the box into Lily's hands. Now it belongs to you. Lily opened the box. Inside was a delicate gold locket, heart-shaped with a tiny flower engraved on the front. It's beautiful, Lily breathed. Open it. Lily clicked the locket open. Inside was a tiny photograph on one side. On the other, an inscription, Faith finds a way. My mother wrote that, Eleanor said. She believed it her whole life. And now because of you, I believe it too. Lily threw her arms around Eleanor's neck. Thank you, she whispered. I'll keep it forever. I know you will, sweetheart. I know you will. The snow continued to fall as the guests departed. Sandra and Lily were the last to leave, bundled against the cold Shadow trotting beside them. Mom, Lily said as they walked to the car. Yes, baby. I think Grandma Ruth would have liked this day. Sandra stopped, looked at her daughter, at the locket now hanging beside the wooden cross. I think she would have loved it, Sandra agreed. And I think she's very, very proud of you. Lily smiled. I know she is. I can feel it. They drove home through the quiet, snow-covered streets of Willowbrook, and for the first time in weeks, the world felt at peace. But somewhere in the darkness, a man named Whitmore was watching the news. He saw the sentencing, saw Victor Crane led away in chains, saw the celebration outside the courthouse, and he saw the face of an 8-year-old girl surrounded by cameras clutching the collar of a Belgian Malinois. Whitmore turned off the television. He pulled out a burner phone, and he made a call. We have a problem. The girl knows too much, and Victor talked. It's time to disappear. He paused, listening. No, not yet. First, we tie up loose ends. He hung up. And in the silence of his office, surrounded by files and forged documents, he began to plan. The game wasn't over. It was just beginning a new round. Agent Torres called at 6 a.m. on a Saturday morning. Sandra answered on the second ring, her voice thick with sleep. Hello. Ms. Parker, this is Agent Torres. I need you and Lily to stay inside today. Lock your doors. Don't answer for anyone except law enforcement with proper identification. Sandra was fully awake now. What happened? We identified Whitmore. His real name is Gerald Whitmore. He's a forensic accountant who worked for a law firm in Portland. He's been laundering money for criminal organizations for over a decade. And last night he disappeared. Sandra's blood ran cold. Disappeared. His apartment is empty. His bank accounts are cleared. He's running. But before he left, he made a phone call to someone in Willowbrook. We don't know who yet. You think he's coming here? I think he's tying up loose ends. And your daughter is the biggest loose end in this entire case. Sandra hung up and immediately went to Lily's room. The bed was empty. Lily? Sandra called, her voice rising with panic. Lily? No response. She ran through the house, checking every room. Kitchen, bathroom, living room. The back door was unlocked. Shadow was gone too. Sandra grabbed her phone and dialed Marcus with shaking hands. Lily's missing. She's not in the house. Shadow's gone too. Marcus's voice was sharp with urgency. Where could she have gone? I don't know. She was asleep when I checked on her last night. She never leaves without telling me. Stay there. I'm on my way. I'll have every unit in the county looking for her. He hung up. Sandra sank against the wall, her heart pounding so hard she could barely breathe. Her daughter was out there somewhere, and a man who had helped steal millions from dying people was hunting her. Lily hadn't planned to leave. She had woken before dawn with a strange feeling, a pressure in her chest that wouldn't go away. Shadow had been pacing by her bedroom door, whimpering softly. "What is it, boy?" she had whispered. He had scratched at the door, then looked back at her with those intelligent amber eyes. She knew that look. The same look he had given her on Thornwood Lane. The same look that had led her to the cellar. Without thinking, she had pulled on her clothes, grabbed her jacket, and followed him out the back door. Now they were walking through the early morning darkness, Shadow leading her toward the edge of town. "Where are we going?" Lily asked, but the dog didn't pause. He moved with purpose, his training taking over his senses, locked onto something Lily couldn't detect. They passed the old mill, the abandoned gas station, the creek where Lily used to catch frogs in the summer. And then Shadow stopped. They had reached the Bennett cottage, but something was wrong. The front door stood open. No lights inside. And parked in the driveway was a car Lily didn't recognize. Shadow's growl rumbled low in his chest. Lily's heart hammered. "We should go back. We should get help." But then she heard it. Eleanor's voice, muffled but unmistakable. "Please, please don't do this." Lily's blood turned to ice. Someone was inside with the Bennetts. Someone who shouldn't be there. She pulled out her phone and dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? Someone's at the Bennett cottage. I think they're hurting them. Please send help. What's your location? Cedar Lane, the white cottage at the end. Please hurry. She hung up before the operator could ask more questions. Then she looked at Shadow. "We can't wait," she whispered. "They need us now." The dog's tail dropped low. His body tensed, ready. Together, they crept toward the open door. Inside, Gerald Whitmore stood over Harold and Eleanor Bennett with a gun in his hand. He was smaller than Lily had imagined. Thin, balding, glasses that made him look more like a librarian than a criminal. But his eyes held a coldness that made her skin crawl. "I'm not going to prison because of you," he was saying. "Victor was supposed to handle this cleanly, but he got sloppy, and now I'm cleaning up his mess." Harold stepped in front of Eleanor's wheelchair. "You won't get away with this. The FBI knows who you are. The FBI thinks I'm in Mexico by now. By the time they figure out I'm here, you'll both be dead, and I'll be on a plane to somewhere without extradition." Eleanor's voice shook, but didn't break. "There's a child involved in this case, an 8-year-old girl. If you hurt us, she'll never stop fighting. She'll never let you rest." Whitmore laughed. "The little hero. Please, she's just a kid who got lucky. Once I'm done here, I'll take care of her too." Lily's hands clenched into fists. He was going to kill the Bennetts. Then he was going to kill her. Unless she stopped him. She looked at Shadow, made a silent gesture. The one she had practiced with him 100 times. Flank left. Shadow moved like smoke circling around the side of the cottage. Lily took a deep breath and stepped through the front door. "Hey!" she shouted. Whitmore spun around, his gun swinging toward her. "What the—" That was as far as he got. Shadow hit him from behind like a missile. 70 pounds of trained muscle slamming into his legs, sending him crashing to the floor. The gun flew from his hands, skittering across the wooden boards. Lily dove for it. Her small fingers closed around the grip just as Whitmore kicked free from Shadow and lunged toward her. She raised the weapon with both hands the way Marcus had shown her at the community safety demonstration. "Don't move." Whitmore froze. For a long moment they stared at each other. A balding accountant and an 8-year-old girl, the gun trembling between them. "You won't shoot," Whitmore said, but his voice wavered. "Try me." Shadow positioned himself between Lily and the man, teeth bared, ready to strike again. Harold grabbed a heavy candlestick from the mantel and stood beside his wife, his old body tense with protective fury. "You made a mistake coming here," Harold said. "A very big mistake." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Whitmore's face twisted with rage. "You stupid little—" He lunged. Shadow launched himself at the man's arm. Lily's finger tightened on the trigger. The door burst open. Marcus Reed tackled Whitmore from behind, slamming him to the ground with enough force to crack the floorboards. Within seconds, the accountant was in handcuffs, his face pressed against the wood, his carefully planned escape crumbling around him. Agent Torres appeared moments later, her weapon drawn, her eyes scanning the room. "Clear," she called. "Clear." Marcus confirmed, pulling Whitmore to his feet. Torres looked at Lily, who still held the gun in shaking hands. "You can put that down now, sweetheart. It's over." Lily lowered the weapon slowly. Her arms felt like lead. Her whole body trembled. Then Eleanor was there, pulling herself from her wheelchair, wrapping Lily in an embrace so tight it hurt. "Our angel," Eleanor whispered. "Our brave, foolish, wonderful angel." Harold joined them, his weathered hands on Lily's shoulders. "You shouldn't have come alone. You could have been killed." "I couldn't let him hurt you," Lily said, her voice breaking. "Not after everything." Sandra burst through the door, her face wild with fear and relief. "Lily." She crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her daughter from Eleanor's arms, crushing her against her chest. "Don't you ever do that again. Do you hear me? Ever." "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm sorry." But Shadow knew. He knew something was wrong. Sandra looked at the dog who sat panting beside them, his work done. "We need to talk about this family's definition of staying safe," she said. But there was no anger in her voice. Only love. Only gratitude. Marcus approached them. Whitmore secured in Torres's custody. "It's over," he said. "For real this time. We got the last one." Lily looked up at him. "All of them. Every bad guy. Every single one. The network is destroyed. The money is being recovered. And everyone responsible is going to prison for a very long time." Lily exhaled slowly. For the first time in weeks, the weight on her chest lifted. It was really over. Spring arrived in Willowbrook with a gentleness that felt like forgiveness. The snow melted, the flowers bloomed. And on the site where the old Hartwell mansion once stood, something beautiful was taking shape. The community had voted unanimously. The abandoned property would be transformed into a garden, a place of healing, a monument to the courage that had saved 6 lives. They called it the Bennett Hope Garden. Lily stood at the entrance on opening day, Shadow beside her as always. She wore a new dress her mother had bought for the occasion, but her grandmother's cardigan was draped over her shoulders, and both the wooden cross and Eleanor's locket hung at her collar. Harold and Eleanor arrived first, Eleanor walking now with a cane, her recovery nearly complete. "Look at this," Eleanor breathed, taking in the rows of flowers, the winding paths, the benches donated by local businesses. "It's beautiful." "It's because of you," Lily said. "All of you. If you hadn't survived, none of this would exist." Harold shook his head. "It's because of you, Lily. We survived because you refused to walk away." The other families arrived soon after. Robert and Margaret Henderson arm in arm, their grandson's betrayal slowly healing into scar tissue. David and Grace Walter, quieter now, but finding peace in the community that had rallied around them. Deputy Marcus Reed came in his dress uniform, Sandra on his arm. They had made it official last month. Dating, together, building something that felt like family. Agent Torres was there too, her FBI badge replaced by civilian clothes for once. "I have news," she told Lily as the crowd gathered. "Victor Crane's appeal was denied. He'll serve every day of his 80-year sentence. Tyler Henderson got 40 years. Derek Simmons got 30. And Gerald Whitmore is looking at life without parole." Lily nodded slowly. "Good. You did this, Lily. Every single piece of this justice exists because an 8-year-old girl heard a voice and refused to ignore it." The ceremony began at noon. The mayor spoke about community, about courage, about the importance of looking out for one another. Pastor Williams offered a prayer of thanksgiving and healing. And then Harold Bennett took the podium. 60 years ago, he began, I planted my first garden with my father. He taught me that every seed carries the potential for life. But potential means nothing without nurturing, without attention, without someone willing to do the hard work of helping it grow. He looked at Lily. 8 weeks ago, my wife and I were dying in darkness. We were seeds buried so deep that no light could reach us. We had given up hope. We were ready to let go. His voice cracked. And then a little girl heard our cry. She paid attention when the whole world walked past. She did the hard work of listening. She nurtured the tiny spark of hope we had left. He gestured to the garden around them. This place exists because of her. Because of Lily Parker. Because she proved that one person, even the smallest person, can change everything. He turned to face the crowd. Let this garden be a reminder, not of the darkness that was, but of the light that came after. Let it teach our children to listen, to care, to never ever walk away from someone in need. He stepped back from the podium, and the crowd burst into applause. Lily's face burned with embarrassment. She wasn't used to this, wasn't comfortable being the center of attention. But Eleanor took her hand and whispered, "Accept it, sweetheart. You earned every bit of this." So Lily smiled, and for the first time she let herself believe that maybe she had done something truly special. The months that followed brought changes none of them could have predicted. Marcus Reed was promoted to sheriff after the previous one retired. He accepted the position with one condition: Willowbrook would establish the first youth canine partnership program in the state. He called it Little Listeners. Lily became its first junior ambassador. Every Saturday morning, she stood before groups of children at the community center, teaching them the skills she had learned from Shadow. "Dogs hear things we can't," she explained. "But that doesn't mean we're helpless. We can learn to pay attention, to notice when something's wrong, to trust our instincts even when adults tell us we're imagining things." She taught them basic commands, showed them how to approach strange dogs safely, explained the signs of distress in both animals and people. But more than anything, she taught them courage. Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. She told them, echoing words her grandmother had spoken long ago. Being brave means doing what's right even when you're terrified. It means speaking up when something feels wrong. It means never ever ignoring someone who needs help. The program grew faster than anyone expected. Within 6 months, Little Listeners had expanded to 3 counties. Schools began incorporating its curriculum. Local police departments started partnering with community organizations to train more youth ambassadors. And at the center of it all was Lily Parker, now 9 years old, wearing her grandmother's cardigan and carrying her grandmother's legacy into the future. Shadow, meanwhile, had found a new calling. Certified as a therapy dog, he now visited Willowbrook's nursing homes every week. The residents lit up when he entered, reaching for his soft fur, whispering secrets into his patient ears. Eleanor Bennett often joined these visits, sitting with elderly patients who had no family, no visitors, no one to remember they existed. "We were almost forgotten," she told Lily once, "locked away where no one could find us. Now we make sure no one else feels that invisible." It was simple work, but it was the most important work of all. Marcus and Sandra married in the fall. The ceremony was small, just family and close friends. The Bennetts sat in the front row. The Hendersons and Walters attended too, their presence a testament to how tragedy had woven them into something like family. Lily served as the flower girl, Shadow as the ring bearer. "I never thought I'd see this day," Sandra said during her vows. "After Lily's father left, I convinced myself we didn't need anyone else, that we could handle everything alone." She looked at Marcus, her eyes glistening. "I was wrong. We weren't meant to be alone. We were meant to find people who understand our scars and love us anyway. People who show up when everything falls apart. People who stay." Marcus took her hands. "I spent my career protecting strangers, running toward danger while everyone else ran away. But I never found a home, never found a place where I belonged." He glanced at Lily, who grinned up at him. "Now I have a family. A stubborn, brave, slightly reckless family that keeps adopting stray dogs and saving old people and making my heart fuller than I ever knew possible." The crowd laughed. "I promise to protect you," Marcus continued. "Both of you. Not because it's my job, but because you're my home." The kiss that followed made Lily cover her eyes, but she was smiling too hard to really mind. Winter returned to Willowbrook. On the anniversary of the rescue, the town gathered once more at the Bennett Hope Garden for a special ceremony. A bronze statue had been commissioned, not of Lily, who had refused that honor despite everyone's protests, but of shadow. The sculpture captured him mid-step, ears alert, gaze forward with purpose. Every muscle defined, every detail perfect. At the base, a plaque read, "To those who listen when others ignore." Harold unveiled it as the crowd watched in silence. "This dog saved our lives," he said simply. And in doing so, he reminded us that salvation doesn't always come from expected places. Sometimes it comes from the forgotten, the overlooked, the dismissed. He looked at Shadow, who sat beside Lily, watching the ceremony with calm dignity. Shadow was retired, discarded, told he was no longer useful, but his purpose never faded, his courage never failed. When it mattered most, he remembered who he was trained to be. Harold's voice strengthened. "Let the statue remind us. Every veteran human or animal still has something to give. Every creature written off by the world still carries value. And every single one of us, no matter how small or broken, has the capacity to save a life." The crowd applauded. Lily knelt beside Shadow, wrapping her arms around his neck. "That's you, boy," she whispered. "That's your legacy. Forever." Shadow's tail wagged slowly. He pressed his head against her shoulder, and in that simple gesture was everything words could never say. The final evening of the year arrived with quiet grace. Lily walked through the Bennett Hope garden as the sun set, Shadow at her side as always. Her mother and Marcus waited at the entrance, giving her space to say goodbye to the place that had grown from so much pain. She paused at the center of the garden where a simple bench faced the sunset. An inscription on the wood read, "For Lily Parker, who heard hope beneath the leaves." She sat down. Shadow settled at her feet. "It's weird," she said softly. "A year ago, I was just a kid walking home from school. I didn't know the Bennetts, didn't know about Victor or Tyler or any of it. I was just normal." Shadow looked up at her. "Now everyone calls me a hero. They put up statues and name programs after me. But I don't feel like a hero. I just did what Grandma Ruth would have done, what anyone should do when they hear someone crying for help." She pulled out the locket Eleanor had given her, opened it, read the inscription for the 1,000th time. "Faith finds a way." "Maybe that's what being a hero really means," she continued. "Not doing big flashy things, not being brave all the time, just listening, caring, not looking away when it would be easier to pretend you didn't hear." She closed the locket and looked at the sunset. "I'm going to keep listening, Shadow, for as long as I live. I'm going to teach other kids to listen too. And someday, when I'm as old as the Bennetts, I'll sit on this bench and remember this year. Remember you. Remember everything we did together." She scratched behind his ears. "And I'll know that we made a difference, that we changed things, that 6 people got to live because we refused to walk away." Shadow's tail thumped against the ground. Agreement. Always agreement. Sandra and Marcus approached as the last light faded. "Ready to go home?" Sandra asked. Lily stood, taking one last look at the garden. "Yeah," she said. "I'm ready." They walked together toward the car, Shadow leading the way as always. Behind them, the Bennett Hope garden settled into twilight. The statue of Shadow caught the final rays of sun, casting a long shadow across the flowers. And somewhere in the quiet of that sacred place, the echo of Eleanor's voice seemed to whisper on the wind. Faith finds a way. The ride home was peaceful. Lily pressed her forehead against the cool window, watching the familiar streets of Willowbrook pass by. Lights glowed in windows. Families gathered for dinner. The ordinary beauty of ordinary life continuing as it always had. "Mom," Lily said quietly. "Yes, baby. Do you think Grandma Ruth is proud of me? Like really proud?" Sandra reached back and took her daughter's hand. "I think she's the proudest grandmother in heaven. I think she's telling everyone up there, that's my granddaughter, that's my Lily." Lily smiled. "I miss her." "I know. I miss her too." Marcus glanced in the rearview mirror. "Your grandmother sounds like she was an amazing woman." "She was," Lily said. "She always told me that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what's right when you're most afraid." Smart lady. The smartest. They pulled into the driveway of their home. The Christmas lights Sandra had hung still glowed even though the holiday was weeks past. "I like them," Sandra had said when Marcus suggested taking them down. They remind me that light exists, even in the darkest months. So the light stayed, and every night they welcomed Lily home. Inside the house smelled of the pot roast Sandra had started that morning. Shadow immediately went to his bed by the fireplace, circling 3 times before settling down with a contented sigh. Lily sat at the kitchen table, watching her mother and Marcus move around each other with the ease of people who had found their rhythm. This was her life now, different from before, fuller, better. "Lily," Marcus said, pulling something from his jacket pocket. "I have something for you." He handed her a small box wrapped in plain brown paper. "What is it?" "Open it." She unwrapped the box carefully. Inside was a badge, silver and blue with the Willowbrook Sheriff's Department seal. But instead of Deputy, the engraving read, "Honorary Junior Sheriff Lily Parker for extraordinary courage and service of others." Lily's eyes widened. "Is this real? Official and everything? Approved by the county board last week. You're the youngest person in state history to receive it." "But I'm just a kid." "You're a kid who saved 6 lives and brought down a criminal network spanning 3 states. Marcus smiled. "I think that qualifies." Lily looked at the badge, then at her mother, then at Marcus. Then she did something she rarely did. She hugged him. Marcus wrapped his arms around her, and for a moment the 3 of them stood there in the kitchen holding on to each other. A family. Broken in places, healing in others, but whole, complete. Home. That night Lily lay in bed unable to sleep. Not from fear this time, not from nightmares or worry or the weight of everything that had happened, but from gratitude. She held the badge in one hand and the locket in the other. Harold's cross hung at her neck. Shadow breathed steadily at her feet. "We did good, didn't we?" she whispered into the darkness. Shadow's tail thumped once. Agreement. Lily closed her eyes. And in the gentle quiet of her room, surrounded by the tokens of courage and love and faith, she let herself believe the truth she had earned. That ordinary people can do extraordinary things. That the smallest voice can be the one that matters most. That listening, really listening, is the bravest thing anyone can do. And that salvation doesn't always come from miracles or angels or powers beyond our understanding. Sometimes it comes from a child who refuses to walk away, a dog who remembers his purpose, a community that chooses love over fear, and the simple, powerful, unbreakable belief that faith finds a way. In the quiet glow of Willowbrook's winter night, one truth rises above everything else. Heroes are not born with capes or powers or destined greatness. They are made in the moments when walking away would be easier. They are forged in the decision to listen when silence would be safer. They are defined not by what they achieve, but by who they refuse to abandon. Lily Parker was 8 years old when she heard a voice crying from darkness. She was 9 when she stood before her town as a symbol of hope. She will be 90 when she finally understands the full weight of what she started. But the seeds she planted in the garden, in the children she taught, in the hearts she touched, will grow long after she is gone. Because courage once shared never dies. It only multiplies. If this story moved your heart, share it with someone who needs to believe that ordinary people can change the world. Leave a comment telling us which moment touched you most. Subscribe so you never miss another story of hope rising from darkness. And remember, the next time you hear a voice that doesn't belong to the silence, don't walk away. Listen, act, save. Because someone out there is waiting for a hero, and that hero might just be you. May grace guide your steps, courage steady your heart, and love light your way home. Today, tomorrow, and always.